This is a summary of Pathwork Lecture 68, which is Suppression of Positive and Creative Tendencies. I'm recording this in late April of 2020 in New York City, center of a pandemic at this point. So I'm using virtual backgrounds just to lighten the work that I do, because life can sometimes feel very heavy right now. Pathwork 68 is one of the central teachings about meditation techniques. Pathwork meditation techniques are different than what many people are used to. This is one. There are others. It's mentioned in the study guide. So even though it's a teaching about how to meditate, it starts off with the title of Suppression of Positive and Creative Tendencies. Why? It is difficult to believe in our divine kernel as human beings. It's intangible, it's unprovable. We are dealing with a lot of instincts and urges and clashes because we're living, in effect, in a world of illusion. This is the Pathwork teaching. We're living in a world of illusion. None of this exists. We're here to learn something. We're here to prompt our urges, prompt our false beliefs, misconceptions, and distortions so that they manifest, so that we can see them and resolve them. That's the purpose of the planet, according to the Pathwork lectures. So if we're here to find our negative, naturally a lot of negative tends to come up, and it makes us fear the positive. It's a paradox, but the guide often says that paradox is the truth of spirituality. You have to see past the obvious to understand the truth of the matter. So we fear our own greatness. But here's the vicious circle that happens. Because we fear it, we don't look at it. So we don't discover that there's nothing to fear. But because we don't look at it, we grow even and ever more fearful of it. So it's a process that may start in a very small way, but it continues. And it gets tighter and tighter. The circle becomes more and more habitual. And it is difficult to break that pattern. Very often in online meetings, I find that people are terrified to explore the unknown. They immediately go to, but I can't understand, I can't see, I don't have the words for. Well, of course you won't. The other night I used this example to someone. When you walk from a bright room into a dim room, you can't see anything for a few moments. Your eyes have to adjust. Different parts of the eye, different mechanical parts of the eye are activated in dim light than in bright light. So I'm sure this isn't accurate, but let me say that when those dim light cells are sleeping and the bright light activators are working, then when you walk into a dim room, you've got to reverse this. It takes a few moments, but as many of you know, after a little bit of time in a dim room, you begin to see more and more. And at some point, if there's a reasonable amount of peripheral light coming in from the window, the outside, you can navigate a room, you can see things, you may not be able to read, but you are able to not bump into things, you're able to see things on the floor, on the table, you can reach for something and have an idea where it is. This is what's going to happen when you begin to look at areas that you have not looked at before. However, it is important to be humble about how long this is going to take. So if for a long time you have not looked, you haven't got the skills that develop when you look a lot. So I've explained this little tight circle of suppression of positive tendencies. If you've built a habitual fear of over-ambitious behavior, of thinking too much of yourself, of arrogance, of reaching further than you can hold, if you have built a habitual pattern of recoiling from this, then to address it, you're going to have to go into this relatively unknown territory. If you think of it like going into a dim room and you give yourself time to acclimate to different signals, different kinds of information, I have always found that people can find their own thought processes once they give themselves a chance, rather than reacting to, I don't see anything, let's go someplace else. So that's why the title of this is about suppression of positive creative tendencies. But the tool that is described in the lecture is a meditative process of bringing these forward. Now, when you bring the positive forward, you're going to bring some negative forward. It comes with the territory. So you'll also have to develop skills about discerning the difference between the two. But aren't these skills you'd want to have anyway? So with that skill, if you develop the skill to tell the two apart, put things in their place, then you will have better access to your positive and creative tendencies. Now, the guide starts off by saying that spiritual work is an eminently private affair. Differently than religion and cultural philosophies have been over the past few millennia. In other words, we're in a time now where we are going very, very deeply into our beliefs. And those beliefs will not match organizational beliefs, general philosophies, how groups of people describe their activities. There's always a compromise in how a group will describe a goal or a mission versus what each individual may see for themselves. So it's useful to remember that in this process, people can give you a helping hand. They can give you suggestions, outlines, but the process is inherently private and individualistic. And that's why we don't do this when we're 10 or 20 or even 30 sometimes. We wait until we're strong enough to hold all of our beliefs and be able to sort through and say, I've tried that for a while, that doesn't really work. The trial and error of life helps you adjust your ideals to what is possible. So it takes some time for you to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So you can then look at, do I want to improve it or does it just not work? So again, this work is inherently private. That can be frustrating to some people because you can't tell them exactly what to do. If you do this, then you'll get that. You can say that generally, but you cannot say it specifically to any person. And so with that, the positive of that is you do this work at your own pace. There are no goals. No one will grade you. There's no real comparison between one person and another's journey. The other reason there's no comparison is people can hold back for a long time and get it, and then they race ahead. And other people can work very hard and look like they're advancing, but they're pushing so hard that they're running into their resistance and not addressing it because they don't want to take a break, stand back and look at it. So you really can't compare two people's processes. So in the second week, what we looked at is the meditation technique to find out what's going on inside. And there isn't a specific name for this, but it's about finding the difference between foreground and background thought processes. In other words, if you want to know what's in your semi-conscious or unconscious mind activity, you're going to have to discern the difference between what's already in your conscious mind, what is in the foreground, versus this dim light background thought process. So what's the difference? Foreground thought is voluntary. We choose to think about it. It's clear-cut, it's concise, it's the product of will. I need to think about this. I want to think about that. Oh, I think I'd like to reflect upon this. This is all foreground thought process. You have it in your lap. We're not after these thoughts. You've already got them. What we're after is finding the background thoughts, all those dim, unnamed thoughts, and inviting them forward. So first of all, it's a bit slow. However, they do come unbidden. So in other words, even though we don't really know what's going on, every time you stop and do, it's common that people, when they start meditation, they'll sit quietly, and the next thing they know, their mind is full of junk. It's just constant thoughts. They're flowing over with thoughts. Well, why aren't these foreground thoughts? Because we're not choosing to think them. They are coming unbidden. They are disorganized because they've been somewhat unconscious. They're coming in as fragments of sentences, words, images. In film, sometimes they'll replicate this with a number of disconnected scenes, because that's what it feels like. All of a sudden, we're just flooded with 15 different scenes or thoughts or details. We can't track them because there's a narrative involved, because they're not voluntary. The background thoughts project, or the product of inner conflicts that have never been expressed. And that's what we're after in this work. We already know what we think. But these background thoughts affect what we do without actually standing up and saying so. So it's as if you're in a boat, you think you're steering the boat, and you've got this unconscious activity under the boat, moving around and changing the direction it's in, so that you can't figure out what's going on. So this is the difference, trying to describe the difference between foreground thoughts and background thoughts. Whenever you sit down and try to clear your mind, these background thoughts will flood in. In Pathwork, we're not trying to get rid of them. Some techniques are about clearing your mind and being in a state of no thought. In Pathwork, what we're trying to do is we're trying to move away the foreground thoughts. Stop thinking of your grocery list. Stop thinking of what you have to do in the morning, so that background thoughts can come forward. But what we want to do is we want to notice these. So we want to take a step back from them, instead of feeling that we're being flooded by all these background thoughts. We want to just let them flush through. Wow, look at that. That's 20 different half sentences in a row. Whoa, that's this and that's that. And look at so much activity. And if you take this step back and observe what's happening, you may be able to see patterns, and patterns are what we're after. If you try to fix everything that's wrong with you, everything that you want to address, that's a lot of work. And some of the things that may not work well with you aren't that important. They really aren't. So that you spend a lot of time addressing them, but you don't get much in reward for that. You don't get much return for the amount of time you invest. In Pathwork, we use a daily review and a lot of other activities and processes and tools and techniques to try to find something that shows up just a little bit in a lot of different areas, so that we can attempt to address that. And if we can address it, if we can unravel the thought process and find the inner conflicts, then we have just fixed what could appear in 24 situations, so that you get a big boost out of that. You say, wow, I worked on this and now I'm happy. I'm much happier than I thought I was. Now you know what comes next. I'm very, very happy today, and then the next day I have more work to do. But that's like any other process that human beings go through. I tease people about personal hygiene, because the guide calls daily review spiritual hygiene. So we used to bathe once a month, then we bathed once a week. Now sometimes people bathe daily or more than once a day. You can't just give up on that because it's tiresome or I don't want to, without some consequences. Spiritual hygiene is the same way. We may have only reviewed our spiritual life once in a lifetime, or once a month, or once a year. This kind of work is like taking a daily shower. Of course, you'll see more because you're working at a different level. You're not just trying to scrape off layers of goo. You're trying to achieve a certain level of personal comfort and cleanliness that is, again, different for every single person. So I got into that because by recognizing patterns, we can clean up a lot of things at once. When I was home with my kids, and I would declutter a room, you look at the room and go, oh, and then you decide to go at it. And I always had a method. And I would pick up all the laundry. And so you go through and pick up all the laundry. Then you go through and pick up all the dirty dishes. Then you go through and do this and go through and do that. And because I was sweeping through the room doing only one thing, I could at least get one thing done, even though there were 20 different pieces of laundry or 10 different dishes around the room. When you get down to the place where you're dusting, I know this sounds banal, but taking care of your life is, you got to dust, got to put away the laundry, you got to clean the dishes, prepare the food. When you can go through and you can sweep through and clear out one particular layer of debris or clutter, you have a really good feeling about having accomplished something. Even if the next thing you notice is now we have to vacuum, now we have to dust. So the same approach is useful in doing spiritual work. So back to foreground and background thoughts. The guide goes on to differentiate background thoughts. And what he says is that there are three main kinds of background thoughts. One is a symptom of a disturbed emotion. Disturbed emotion, meaning you're angry and you don't know why. And that makes you upset or fearful, or there's an anxiety level about an emotion that you don't really want to feel or don't understand where it came from. So that would produce symptoms. The second would be re-experiencing events or conversations in snatches and fragments. In other words, you just remember, and I said this to that person, and it's almost as if you go through and you say it over and over again, trying to find the perfect phrase. I tease that most of us do not live the life that we see on television or in movies, because we don't spend 3 weeks trying to figure out the perfect comeback line. We stumble with our phrases and words. We're in real time, in the moment. And so we naturally think back, oh, I should have said this, or I could have said that, or I didn't add this. And we may do that on a constant basis. We're regurgitating conversations that don't sit well. And that's why they're a background thought. They don't sit well, they're not terribly important, but we can't let them go. And so they come through in fragments and small sequences. The third kind of background thought that we have is wishful thinking. Now, the guide separates that into 2 categories. When I go through and I create a study guide, I go 1, 2, 3, and then I do the ABC, because it's not always easy to see the structure of what the guide is saying inside a lengthy paragraph. So I'm reading this off, but I hope that you take a look at the study guide or read the lecture to get your own viewpoint of all this. So wishful thinking comes in 2 kinds. It comes in re-experiencing a conversation, not just thinking about it, but going through, walking through and saying, when I came in the door and I said this and she said, I should have said this, now start that over, and rewinding and going through and re-experiencing a conversation as it might have been. Trying to nail down the perfect way to have communicated or shared or been with someone. And the other kind is a daydream of what you wish would happen in the future. So daydream pretty much says it. So background thought material, symptoms of disturbed emotions, re-experiencing events or conversations, or wishful thinking. What did I say? What could I have said? Or what could I say next time? The overall approach of this kind of meditation, of sitting and allowing all these thoughts to come forward and flush through you, the point is to make these background thoughts to allow these background thoughts to become foreground thoughts. So we want to transfer the background thought material into conscious foreground thoughts. We want to finish the sentences. We want to realize what we're thinking about so that we can put it in context rather than just being a little upset or nervous. We want to learn to discriminate in the meaning. So when I started, I talked about a vicious circle where I may be a really good person, but I could be over ambitious, so I need to just back off. And then that fear of being too aggressive or too ambitious and having to back it off becomes a self-perpetuating habitual pattern. What we're trying to do is undo this pattern. So we're trying to find out what this is about. What is all this foreground activity about? Were you really rude? If so, let's think about it. Let's examine what happened. Instead of letting it scurry around like mice in the night, let's bring it up and let's look at it. So we want to discriminate as to the meaning of these vague background thoughts. And thirdly, if you find that they are insignificant, if you find they are insignificant, let them go. The guide describes that in wonderfully poetic terms, how we have a lot of dust and debris running around our minds. Sometimes we can focus on that because we're afraid to look at things that are more serious that we don't know how to handle. So we use background thoughts as a distraction, as busy work to keep us occupied. And so the guide's saying, bring them forward, take a look at them. And if they're not important, release them. And that has to be a skill. So that when you realize that you're focusing on something that is silly, inconsequential, and that you've resolved, some part of you needs to let those thoughts go. Not suppress them, not say, bad thought, go away, but release them. Instead of letting them hum in the background and wondering what's going on. You bring them forward, you find out what they're about, and for a large portion of our thought process, you let them go. It's a common thing to say that we only remember some people remember only the good parts, some people only remember the bad parts in their memory system. There's a scientific explanation for that, in that we really should only be remembering the parts that didn't work, because why would you worry about the parts that did? If you wish to remember the good stuff, that's great. But in terms of advancing the organism, in terms of growing up and getting to be a better person, what you need are the examples of what you did wrong so that you can focus and address those. If you are doing well without having to put a lot of work into it and are at ease in a lot of things, go ahead and do them with gusto and grace, but you don't need re-education on those things. The places in you where you speak rudely to somebody or you are careless or thoughtless, that part needs to come up and be looked at. If it bothers you, assuming it does bother you, that part needs to be brought up and looked at. So there's a reason why we harbor all these background thoughts, these fears and concerns. We know they're important, but we don't know what to do with them. And so Pathwork Lecture 68 has a suggested method of sitting down and allowing all these to come forward. And if you're good at doing this in your head, that's fine. I tend to use a piece of paper and make lists. And it sounds silly, but after you've listed them out, they tend to have less power over you. They're not unconscious anymore. And if you hear them again, you realize, yes, that's still that same conversation, but I've decided it's not very important. So I'm just going to release it. And that's how making them conscious is how you are able to then release them. So then the guide talks about meditation in general. And what he says is, it's a skill. It's going to take some effort. If this is not something you already do, then you're going to have to invest. You're going to have to spend some concentration and some time. You're going to have to accept that you will have to fumble around until you find a way to do this that works for you. Again, this work is highly individualistic. I know that when I was first taught meditation, the first thing they would say to me is stand up or sit up and make your head straight and align your frame and put both feet on the floor with your knees together and your feet together. That is an uncomfortable posture for me. I do not relax when I'm sitting like that. For me, I need to not think about how I'm sitting in order to release my mind. Otherwise, how I'm sitting becomes a distraction for me. Now, I understand why they're saying that, and it may be very useful for some people. The important thing is I did try it their way. And after a few years, I'll do it my way. It's important to try. It's important to find the benefits of those kinds of instructions. Take what works and leave the rest behind. Of course, when we take what works and leave the rest, there is a chance that we're throwing away something that works because we don't want it to work. The fail-safe about that is that if you're not doing something spiritually that you need to do, it will come up again. So you can avoid it for a period of time, but it will reemerge. And this is partly because of your positive intention to do the work you need to do. So that's a short summary of Pathwork Lecture 68, Suppression of Positive and Creative Tendencies. Thanks for listening. I hope that you read the lecture. It's beautiful. Thank you.